In this video, we will learn 10 new words through short stories. It might seem like a small step, but in 100 days, you will easily learn 1,000 words, which is a big achievement. To help you learn better, please watch each video twice. At the end of the video, try to make your own sentences using the new words you've learned. Stay with us and let's explore today's new words. Sir, you need Form B-17 for that. I had only one simple task: register my small business. But as I walked into the government office that day, I had no idea I was about to enter the maze of bureaucracy. The room was full of tired people waiting in long lines. A man at the counter was arguing, waving a paper in frustration. Sir, you need Form B-17 for that, the officer said without looking up. The man sighed and left. I stepped forward. I'd like to register my business. The officer nodded. Fill out Form A-12. I filled it out. After waiting an hour, I handed it back. The officer scanned it, then frowned. You also need Form B-17. I sighed. Where do I get that? Office 3 upstairs. I climbed the stairs, found Office 3, and knocked. A woman inside barely looked at me. You need approval from Office 5 before I can give you Form B-17. I went to Office 5. We can't approve this until you get a signature from Mr. Reynolds in Office 2. Back downstairs. Office 2. Mr. Reynolds was gone for lunch. I waited an hour. Finally, he signed my document, but you also need a tax verification from Office 7, he said. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I was losing my mind. I ran from office to office, collecting forms, stamps, and signatures. Each time I thought I was done, another rule appeared. At the end of the day, exhausted and holding a stack of papers, I returned to the first counter. The officer looked at me. Ah, you have everything. But you're 5 minutes late. The office is now closed. Come back tomorrow. I stared in shock. My head spun. This was bureaucracy, a system so full of rules that even the simplest things became impossible. Defeated, I left, knowing I had to do it all over again the next day.
Only the rich may enter. The city sparkled with golden lights. From a distance it looked like a dream. But I knew the truth. This was not a city for everyone. This was a plutocracy. I stood outside the Grand Hotel, my hands gripping my thin jacket. Inside, the rich laughed over expensive meals. Outside, people like me waited for opportunities that never came. I stepped forward. "Excuse me, sir," I said to the guard at the entrance. "I have an interview with Mr. Donovan." The guard looked at me, then at my clothes. He smirked. "Are you sure? People like you don't usually get meetings with people like him." I lifted my chin. "I have an invitation." He sighed, checked the list, and let me in. Inside, everything smelled of money, polished floors, crystal chandeliers, and soft music played by a live orchestra. I felt small, but I reminded myself I had worked hard for this chance. I entered the conference room. Mr. Donovan, the powerful businessman, sat in a leather chair. "Emma, right?" he said without looking up from his phone. Yes, sir, I replied. I've seen your proposal. Smart. But here's the thing. He finally looked at me. You don't come from money. I froze. Excuse me. This city is a plutocracy, Emma. We don't invest in people like you. We invest in people like us. But my idea could help thousands of people. He shrugged. That's not how a plutocracy works. If it doesn't make the rich richer, it doesn't matter. I clenched my fists. So, no matter how hard I work, I can never win? He smiled. Not in a plutocracy. I walked out, my heart pounding. Outside, the city still sparkled, but now I saw it for what it was. A cage made of gold trapping the poor outside while the rich played inside. But as I looked around at the people like me, I knew one thing. Plutocracies only last as long as people accept them. And I wasn't going to accept it anymore.
The stranger in our village. I was born in a small village where everyone looked the same, spoke the same, and believed the same. We were proud of our traditions. We believed in nationalism. Our country was the best. Our people were the strongest, and outsiders were not welcome. One cold morning, a stranger arrived. He was tired, his clothes torn. I need help, he said in a weak voice. The villagers gathered around, whispering. He is not one of us, someone said. We should send him away. But I felt something different. What if he needs us? I asked. An old man shook his head. Luca, don't forget nationalism. We must protect our own people first. I wanted to agree, but when I looked into the stranger's eyes, I saw fear. I made a decision. I will help him, I said. I took him to my home. His name was Elias. I ran from war, he said. I lost everything. I shared my food. I gave him a warm blanket. And slowly he told me his story. He was not different from us. He had a family, dreams, and a love for his country, just like we did. Days passed, and the villagers watched me with suspicion. Luca, you are forgetting nationalism, they said. He is not one of us. But what if nationalism is not about hate? I asked. What if it's about helping each other, no matter where we are from? The village was silent. One night a storm came. The river overflowed and the village was in danger. Houses were flooded and people needed help. Elias ran outside and saved 3 children. He built shelters and shared food. When the storm passed, the villagers stood before him. You saved us, they said. Elias smiled. We are all people before we are nations. From that day our village changed. We still believed in nationalism, but now we understood it differently. We were proud of our home, but we also welcomed those in need. And for the first time, our village was stronger, not because we pushed others away, but because we let them in.
The recipe that changed everything. I grew up in a small town where every street smelled like my grandmother's cooking. She believed in tradition. We don't need foreign spices, she would say. Our food is the best. But things were changing. More people from different countries moved to our town. Restaurants with unfamiliar names appeared. Some people welcomed multiculturalism, but others, like my grandmother, did not. One day, a new bakery opened next to our shop. It was run by a man named Amir from another country. His bakery smelled different, sweet, spicy, unfamiliar. Grandmother crossed her arms. "We won't eat that." But I was curious. I stepped inside. "What is that smell?" I asked. Amir smiled. "It's cardamom, a spice from my home." I took a small bite of his pastry. It was warm, rich, and full of flavors I had never tasted. When I returned home, I had an idea. What if I combined Amir's spices with my grandmother's recipe? That night I baked. I added cardamom to our traditional cake. The smell filled the house. When my grandmother came in, she stopped. "What is that?" I handed her a slice. She hesitated but took a bite. Her eyes widened. "It's different." The next day, I placed the cake in our shop window. People stopped, curious. Some recognized the flavor, others were excited to try something new. Then something unexpected happened. Amir walked in with his own tray. "Let's trade," he said. My grandmother watched as people tasted both cakes. They didn't choose one over the other. They loved both. From that day, everything changed. My grandmother and Amir started experimenting together. Our shop became a place where cultures mixed, not just in food, but in stories and friendships. Our town was no longer just one thing. It was multicultural. And it was beautiful.
A letter to my homeland. I was born in a small village where the mountains kissed the sky. My childhood smelled like my mother's bread, and my father's voice echoed in the street. But one day everything changed. War came. We had to leave. We became part of the diaspora, scattered like seeds in the wind. Now I live in a big city, far from home. The streets are noisy, the air smells different, and the language is unfamiliar. The diaspora is full of people like me, lost between two places, longing for what was left behind. I work in a cafe, serving coffee to strangers. One day, an old man walked in, his accent familiar. "Where are you from, son?" he asked. I hesitated. I am from here now." He smiled. "But your heart is still there, isn't it?" That night I couldn't sleep. I took out a piece of paper and started writing. "Dear homeland, do you remember me? I miss the smell of your soil after the rain. I miss my mother's laughter. I miss the sound of the river. But I am strong. The diaspora has taught me to carry you with me, even when I am far away." The next day, I met a young woman at the cafe. She was also part of the diaspora, from a different country, but her eyes carried the same sadness. "I miss home," she said. I nodded. "Me too." We talked for hours, sharing memories of places that no longer felt real. That's when I realized something. Home is not just a place. It's the stories we carry, the traditions we keep, the people we meet in the diaspora who understand our longing. So I keep writing. Letters to my homeland, letters to the past, letters to the future. Because even in the diaspora, I am not alone.
The man who promised everything. Our town was small, forgotten, and tired. Factories had closed, jobs had disappeared, and people felt hopeless. Then one day a man arrived. His name was Victor Hale. He stood in the town square, speaking with fire in his voice. The politicians don't care about you. The rich take everything and you get nothing. But I will change that. I will fight for you. People cheered. They needed hope, and Victor gave them exactly that. He promised jobs, safety, and a return to the good old days. His populism was like a fire spreading through the town. I wasn't sure. How will he do all these things? I asked my father. Does it matter? He said. At least someone is listening to us. Days passed and Victor's movement grew. He blamed our problems on outsiders, saying, "It's their fault. They take your jobs, your homes, your future." His populism gave people an enemy, someone to blame. Then the town changed. People whispered about neighbors who weren't real locals. A man's shop was burned because he was different. Fear replaced hope. One night I stood in the square watching Victor speak again. His voice was strong, his words powerful. But I saw something else, his eyes. They weren't full of hope. They were full of control. His populism wasn't about helping people. It was about power. I turned to my father. Do you still believe him? He looked at me, then at the crowd, now shouting with anger instead of joy. And for the first time, doubt crossed his face. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Populism can be a light in the darkness. But if we're not careful, it can also be the fire that burns everything down."
Invisible, until I wasn't. I used to think that being invisible was a superpower. If no one sees you, they can't hurt you. But I learned that marginalization is not a superpower. It is a prison. I grew up in the poorest part of the city, where people like me were ignored. At school, teachers never called on me. At work, no one listened to my ideas. When I walked into a store, security followed me like I was a thief. This was marginalization, not because I had done something wrong, but because of who I was. One day, I saw a job opening at a big company. I had the skills, the experience, the passion. But when I walked into the interview, the manager barely looked at me. "We'll call you," he said. They never did. Marginalization is when you are good enough, but no one gives you a chance. I started to believe what the world told me, that I didn't matter, that I should stay silent, that I should accept my place. But then I met Mrs. Lopez, an old woman from my neighborhood. She had lived through the same marginalization but never let it break her. "People will try to erase you," she told me. "But you must make them see you." So I stopped waiting. I started my own small business. I spoke up in meetings. I wrote about marginalization in the city newspaper. People began to listen. One day that same company called me. They had seen my work. They wanted me now. But this time I smiled and said, "I'm not invisible anymore. I don't need your permission to be seen." Because that's the truth. Marginalization is real, but it is not the end of the story. If the world won't give you a voice, you must create your own.
The day I questioned everything. I always believed that my country, my culture, my way of life was the best. The food we ate, the music we listened to, the way we spoke, everything was superior. I never thought about it much. It was just the truth. But that was ethnocentrism. It wasn't until I traveled to another country that I realized how deeply ethnocentrism shaped my thoughts. I moved to a small town in Japan for a student exchange program. Everything felt strange, the language, the customs, the food. I struggled to eat with chopsticks. I didn't understand their quiet way of greeting, and I found their traditions unusual. One evening, my host family prepared dinner. It was a beautifully arranged plate of raw fish. I stared at it, my stomach turning. "In my country, we cook fish," I said, pushing the plate away. "This doesn't look right." My host mother smiled politely but said nothing. My host brother, Hiro, frowned. "Why is your way better?" he asked. I laughed. "It just is. Cooking food makes it safer and tastier." Hiro looked at me for a long time and then said, "That's ethnocentrism. You believe your way is the only right way. But in Japan, we have eaten raw fish for centuries. We don't see it as strange." I wanted to argue, but something in his voice stopped me. Was I being unfair? Was I judging their culture by my own standards? I had never thought about ethnocentrism before, but suddenly it was staring me in the face. That night I sat in my room thinking. I had always seen my way as the best, but wasn't that just because it was familiar? The next day, I decided to try again. Dinner, I picked up the chopsticks, clumsily holding a piece of sushi. I put it in my mouth. Taste was fresh, the texture different, but it wasn't bad. I looked at Hiro and smiled. "It's good." He grinned. "See? Different doesn't mean wrong." That was the day I questioned everything. The day I learned that ethnocentrism can make us blind. But if we open our minds, we can see the beauty in other cultures.
The choice between beliefs. I grew up in a small village where religion played a central role in our lives. Everyone went to church every Sunday, and our lives seemed to revolve around religious events and belief. But as I grew older, I started to question everything, and that's when I first heard the word secularism. It started when I moved to the city for university. The city was different, diverse, full of different people with different beliefs. Some were religious, but many weren't. At first, it felt strange to be surrounded by people who didn't attend church, didn't follow the same religious traditions as my family. But one day, I overheard a conversation between two classmates that made me think. They were talking about how secularism was becoming more common in modern societies, especially in cities like ours. Secularism is the idea that religion should not have power over government or society, one of them explained. It's about keeping religion separate from politics and public life. The word secularism kept echoing in my mind. I had never thought about it this way before. In my village, religion was the heart of everything. But here, it seemed that people lived their lives without religion controlling every decision. I started to wonder if secularism was a better way to live. It meant that people could follow their beliefs if they wanted to, but they didn't have to be forced to follow one belief in particular. Everyone had the freedom to think for themselves. One evening, I sat down with my roommate, Mark, who was an atheist. He had never been religious, and we often discussed our different perspectives. That night, we talked about secularism. "You know, Alex," Mark said, "secularism means that people don't have to live by the rules of any religion. It's about respecting everyone's freedom to choose what they believe or not believe." I thought about what he said. Growing up, I had always felt pressure to follow religious rules because everyone around me did. But in the city, I saw people living their lives without that pressure, choosing their own path. I started to understand that secularism wasn't about rejecting religion, it was about allowing people to believe or not believe without forcing anyone to follow one path. In the end, I realized that secularism gave me the freedom to explore my own beliefs, without the fear of judgment or restriction. It wasn't about pushing religion away. It was about creating a space where all beliefs were respected, and everyone had the freedom to make their own choices. The race for success. Ever since I was a child, I've heard people talk about meritocracy. In my school, my teachers always told me, if you work hard, you will succeed. This is a meritocracy. But what did it really mean? I often wondered. It wasn't until I started working that I truly understood the concept. I had just landed my first job at a big company. On my first day, my boss, Mr. Williams, gave us all a speech. He said, "This company is built on meritocracy. If you prove yourself, you will move up. Your hard work, your skills, and your achievements will be the only things that matter." That sounded fair to me. I thought, if I work hard, I can be successful too. But as time went on, I began to realize that meritocracy wasn't always as simple as it seemed. At the office, there were some people who seemed to get promotions faster than others. They had great skills, of course, but they also had connections. Mark, one of the top managers, had been promoted very quickly. He was smart and talented, but I noticed that he also knew a lot of important people in the company. Everyone respected him because of his skills, but there was something more. His ability to network and build relationships with the right people. One day, I asked him how he got ahead so quickly. He smiled and said, "It's all about meritocracy, Daniel. But remember, sometimes it's not just about your skills. It's also about who you know and how you use your talents to help others." That was when I started to question the idea of meritocracy. I had always believed that if I worked hard and showed my abilities, I would be rewarded. But I was beginning to see that success in a meritocracy wasn't only about working hard. It was also about navigating the system and using the right connections. Hard work was still important, but it wasn't the only factor that determined success. Eventually, I learned to combine hard work with the ability to build relationships and show my value in different ways. I became more strategic in my approach. I didn't just focus on doing my job well, I also made an effort to meet the right people and prove my worth outside of just my daily tasks. In the end, I realized that meritocracy is not a perfect system. But it can still work if you understand that success comes from both personal effort and understanding how to use your abilities to navigate the world around you.